Hello, Longhorns. This is Miss Clay here. Today we're going to do a geometry review day to help us prepare for our upcoming PMA exam. Okay, so first things first, remember about trig, we need to make sure that we set our calculator in degrees. So if you're using the TI calculators, either school or if you have one at home, then you press your home button. Then you go to the number 5 for settings. Then you press the number 2 for document settings. And then second down, you'll see angle. And then you change that from radian to degrees if your calculator is in radian. Okay, remember if you're doing decimals, just make sure that you slide the little lever over from radian to degree. So that way all your values are correct. Okay, so remember we had SOHCAHTOA. Oops. There you go. Okay, so we had SOHCAHTOA, real quick review. Remember, angle theta is just any angle of interest. We can have a number right here, and opposite, so it's opposite of the angle. Adjacent means it's touching the angle, and then the hypotenuse is always right across from the right angle. Okay, so if you don't have these in your notes, make sure you can write them down right now from the video. Pause the video and write them down. Or you should have them from your notes, so just dig them out. You can use them while you're working on your assignment. Okay, so we use these expressions, remember, if we know the angle information. So if we can place a number right here for theta, like 32, then we use just the regular sign notation. Now, remember, if we don't know it, then we use the inverse sign. So if we know the side information and don't know the angle, then we use the inverse of sign. And remember how we do that on our calculator. We have all the various trig functions. The sine functions are on the top and the inverse functions are on the bottom, right below them. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to work some of the problems that we have for our assignment. Okay, so let's start off with the first one. Find the value of each trigonometric ratio. Express your answer as a fraction. So all we're doing for this one is just writing the fraction. Remember how we did this? So tan A, remember tan is the only one that doesn't have the hypotenuse in it. So I'm going to label my hypotenuse. So we know it's this. And so we're finding the information based on angle A. Angle A is here. So we're going to say tan A is equal to the opposite. So opposite of A is 14. Adjacent to it is 48. So I can reduce that down. Both of those can be divided by 2. So that's going to be 7/24. And we're just going to leave it in a fraction, remember, because that's all it asks us to do. Okay? So let's move on to the next section. All right? Find the value of each trigonometric ratio to the nearest to the nearest thousandth. So you said hundredth at first. Okay, so let's just get out our calculator. The first one is tan 22. Put in your calculator, tan, remember trig function, press the trig button, and you slide over to tan, put 22 and press enter, and so you should get 0.404, and it said to round to the nearest tenth, to the nearest thousand, so that's where we're gonna leave it. That's how we do these next four right here, all right? Let's move down to the next ones. Find the missing side, round to the nearest tenth. Okay, so I like to label my hypotenuse always because sometimes the problems get a little tricky when the triangles turn, remember? So it's get a little harder to label. So let's label that so we know. So we have the angles right here. So we have the hypotenuse and we have the adjacent angle. So that means we have to use cosine. So we're going to use cosine. Oopsie, cosine of 67 is equal to x over 13. And remember, if we have a constant on the bottom, all we have to do is multiply it over here in the front. So we rewrite it, 13 cosine 67 is equal to x. We plug that all into our calculator, and I'm going to write our x value up here. And it said round to the nearest tenth, but I'm going to write it all so you can see it. 08. Okay, and it said round to the nearest tenth. So my final answer is 5.1. Okay, so that's how we do the next four. All right. Moving on to the next section. Find the measure of the indicated angle to the nearest 100th degree. All right, so this time we don't have angle information. We need to solve for this. So that means we're using our inverse functions. Okay, so let's label my hypotenuse so I know where it is. Okay, there it is. So I have my hypotenuse and I have the side adjacent to it. So I'm going to use cosine. So I'm going to show us what it looked like first. So that's going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. And then we put it into our calculator to solve for our angle. Put that all in. And so we'll get 19.6. And it says round to the nearest 100th, but that's the final answer. Okay? That's how we do the next set. The next ones. Find each angle measure to the nearest degree. For this section, all we're doing is plugging it right into our calculator, but notice we don't have the angle information. So we're really going to put into our calculator sine inverse 1, and then it's going to have a parenthesis. Okay, and we're going to get V is equal to 20 because it tells us round to the nearest degree. So V is equal to 20. So you'll find the angle information for the next 4. All right. Moving on. Find the length of the side labeled X. Round the intermediate values to the nearest 10th. Use the rounded values to calculate the next value. Round your final answer to the nearest 10th. So that means we have to find this in pieces. So let's look. We have one triangle, and within it, we have 2 right triangles. So we need to find X. But what do we notice? We only know the angle information. We don't have another side, so we have too many unknowns. So let's start on this side and see if we can solve on this side. So this side, we have the angle information and we have one side. So remember, if I have a 90 degree right there, I also have a 90 degree over here. This is going to be my hypotenuse right here. So I'm going to call this side right here Y, so we don't get it confused with X right here. So I have the hypotenuse and I need to find the adjacent. So I'm going to use cosine. So I have cosine 36 is equal to Y over 9. And remember, all we have to do is put that in the front. So we're going to input this into our calculator. 9 cosine 36 is equal to Y. And it says to round to the nearest 10th for our intermediate values. So we're going to round and we're going to get 7.3. Okay. So now we use this value right here. I'm going to write it right here. So now we know this side right here is 7.3. So now we can solve for X because we have 2 values that we know. We know an angle and we know one of the sides. But let's identify our hypotenuses over here. So we're looking for our opposite and we have the adjacent. So that means we're going to use tan. Remember, tan does not have the hypotenuse in it. So we're going to have opposite over adjacent. And we're going to multiply. So we're just going to put this in our calculator. 7.3 tan 47 is equal to X. And so it said round our final answer to the nearest 10th. So X is going to be 7.8. Okay. And that's how we do the next group. All right. Angles of elevation and depression. Remember, elevation looks up, like you're going in an elevator, goes up. Depression looks down, so we're looking down. So the question is, what is the description of angle 2 as it relates to this situation? So let's find out where angle 2 is. Angle 2 is right here. And so there's a little tower person right in here. So let's say if what's above us? The plane. So that means we're looking up. So it's an angle of elevation. All right. Now let's do this next one so we know, remember how to do the drawing when it's drawn like this. Find the values of x and round to the nearest tenth. Remember the tenth. Okay, so remember this whole triangle right here makes another right angle right here. But we also remember our rules. If we have an angle right here of 25, this angle right here is also 25. Okay, and if you don't remember that, we can discuss it some more, but we can do that. You can also calculate it, right? If you know that's 90 take away 25, it's gonna be 5, 8, 65. So you know that's 65. If you don't remember the rule, well, you know this one has to be 25 because those two have to equal 90, and that's 90. All right. So now let's look. We need to find x over here, and we have this information right here is 20. So opposite over adjacent. So remember that's tan because it does not include the hypotenuse. So tan 25 is equal to x over 20. We're just going to put it in the front. So let me put it over here so I don't confuse anybody. So we have 20 times tan 25. So our final answer, it says round to the nearest tenth, is 9.3. All right. All right. So sometimes we don't do quite as well on word problems. So let's draw this one. We have a highway makes an angle of 7 degrees with the horizon. This angle is maintained for 4 miles. Draw and label a diagram to represent your situation. To the nearest hundredth of a mile, how high does the highway rise in this 4-mile section? Show the steps you use to find the distance. Okay, so first let's draw it. So let's say we got a little car right here. Oh, he's having a hard time. So there we go. But he's driving on our little highway and he's going up. Okay, so it says it makes a 7-degree angle with the horizon. So that means it's going up at 7 degrees. And it does this, the little car is going up for 4 miles. Okay, what it wants to know is how high does it rise? So that means I need to find this height right here of x. All right, so let's see. Here's our 90-degree angle right there. So there's our hypotenuse. So we need to find the opposite. So that means we're going to use sine. So sine 7 is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Remember, we just multiply it for sine 7. Put that in your calculator. And it says round to the nearest hundredth of a mile. So x is equal. Let me write the full value so you all see it. Hundredth, remember we look right here. So it's hundredth. So x is equal to 4.9. Okay. Here's the last example for pre-AP. So if you're academic, you can stay on it if you want to see this one. If not, this is for the pre-AP kids. So let's look at this one. Number 30, find the value of x and y. Round the lengths of the segments to the nearest tenth. Show all works necessary for the problem. Okay, so let's look at this one. So we know this one side, we don't know the hypotenuse of either of our triangles, and we don't know this side right here. So if you think of this one right here as one big triangle, I'm going to outline it in blue. Okay, so I'm going to make this equal to z. Okay, so z is equal to x plus y. Okay, everyone see that? Okay, so now I'm going to solve for my big triangle, and I'm going to use this 27 right here because I have this one. So I'm going to say big triangle right here. So I know the opposite, and I need to find the adjacent. Remember, I don't have any information on hypotenuse. So I'm going to use tan. So I do tan 27 is equal to opposite. And I'm going to use my Z length, remember, because that's my total side right there. So remember, if we have a variable in the bottom, we just switch the places. So I'm just going to switch the places right here. All right, so now we put that in our calculator. 10 divided by 10, 27, and we should get 19.6. Okay, so now we know what this total length right here is, 19.6. So now I'm going to find this little triangle right here. We're going to call this one my little guy. So this one's a little triangle. Little triangle. So this time we're going to use the X value right here, and we're going to use this angle instead. So it's going to be tan also, right? No hypotenuse information. Tan 42 is equal to 10 over X this time. Make sure we remember that. Now we're going to switch that. So we're solving for X. And we're going to put that into our calculator. 10 divided by tan 42. And that is going to give us 11.1. All right. So remember up here we said Z is equal to X plus Y. Well, we found X now, and we have Z, so we can say Y is equal to Z minus X, right? All right, so Y is equal to Z minus X. So now we're just going to plug and say 19.6 minus 11.1. So we have Y is equal to 8.5. All right, so you're off to a great start for your review. Ask your teacher if you have any questions. Have a great day.